Hola, I'm Claudia Romo Edelman.
And I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum Milner.
And this is a podcast, a la Latina.
The Playbook to succeed, being your authentic self.
Today, an incredible guest, Monica Bauer, PepsiCo's Global Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer.
And in this episode, you're gonna get 3 key takeaways.
Number 1, learn the playbook on how to become powerful, how to embrace your own power and never give it away.
Number 2, she gave us the do's and don'ts on self-promotion and how to make it work on your behalf.
And number 3, the power of supporting each other, because empowered Latinas need to empower Latinas.
This and more in this episode of
A la Latina. We've been discussing how important it is for Latinas to generate wealth, particularly because we understand that only 33% of Latinas have retirement income from savings or other assets. So how can your company help in this equation?
Well, we have several options for saving and investing accounts. The one for beginners, if you are a beginner, is our fully managed investing product. This is perfect for those who want to set it and forget it. You can select the risk level and even choose the type of companies you can invest in.
That's amazing. So what is the minimum needed to open an account?
$1. You just need $1. No excuses. The earlier you begin to invest, the sooner you will start seeing returns from your investment.
So how can people get started?
Simply download the Money Lion app and open a managed investment account. It's quick. It takes just a few minutes.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
Today, an incredible guest, Monica Bauer.
Monica is PepsiCo's Global Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. She serves on the board for Chicas Poderosas, an organization dedicated to advocating for women, representation, and gender equality in media.
Monica, it's such an honor to have you here with us today in the podcast. Incredible. Thank you so much.
No, gracias a ti. Thank you so much, Claudia. Thank you, Cynthia. Thrilled to be here.
I am obsessed by the fact that a Mexican is in the position that you are, and we want to know how you got there. And you mentioned before the camera started rolling that your mom was a big influence. So can we go back to where you grew up and who were the big influences in your life?
Yeah, of course. So Mexican all the way. Mom Mexican, my dad born in Argentina, but always lived in Mexico. So very, very rooted in Mexico. I have a twin brother.
Like Sotol, 100% Mexican.
No, 100% Mexican husband, Mexican children, muy mexicana. I lived in Mexico with maybe like a little bit of a unique family. My mom is a psychiatrist, so, many years ago, her graduation picture is whatever, like 150 men and 2 women. So hardworking. My dad, comes from the scientific background. So I would say very grounded, like a family very grounded on meritocracy as a value. And I don't know, maybe I was thinking on my way here, given that I have a twin brother, there's a little bit always of like organic competition, to thrive. So maybe that also, was part of it.
Did you win?
No, the guy is a rock star.
Yes.
He's very, very smart.
And so tell us a little bit more. So Mexican all the way through with a psychiatrist mother, a scientific dad, a twin brother, studied in Mexico. Then what happened?
Yeah, studied in Mexico, international relations, and then went to Spain to study an MBA.
Where?
In Madrid, Instituto de Empresa.
Muy bien.
Mm-hmm. But yes, lived in Mexico since I was born until 3 years ago when we moved to the US as a family. Very passionate about making an impact and about philanthropy. So that's actually my first job was in an NGO to support children with cancer, Casa la Amistad para Niños con Cáncer. So it was, the most inspiring job ever. And that's where I started engaging with PepsiCo because PepsiCo was a big partner to the organization. So they eventually invited me to join at that point, it was Sabritas, the Sabritas Foundation, our snacks brand in Mexico. And I thought it was going to be very interesting to see the other side of the coin, right? So one thing is to raise funds, the other one is to give funds from a corporate foundation. So that's how I joined. But, back to family, my friends from Mexico, typical Mexican family with cousins, with aunts, with all the gang.
So you went from the foundation or from the nonprofit to Pepsi, and then have
To
had
Pepsi Foundation.
To
So
Pepsi
from
Foundation.
foundation to
foundation.
Foundation Sabritas.
and then to the business.
Yeah, it was interesting because I studied international relations way more thinking about diplomacy, like my friend here. But once I joined the company, again, it was initially a little bit of the extended it was the philanthropic arm of the corporation, but then I really started enjoying the company, the culture, and I also understood kind of the level of impact you can make from the private sector, especially given, such a large company that operates in, such a robust supply chain. So I got excited. I studied my MBA because I joined PepsiCo, then went abroad to study the MBA and came right back, and then stayed for almost 20 years. So
how was the transition? I'm just curious about the transition of, like categories and sectors for you. There's a huge trend, at least it was, in the last 20 years of going from private to non-for-profit, people looking for more purpose. How was the other way around?
That's
like actually purpose to corporate and more?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, this was many years ago, and I think the sector, the philanthropic sector at that time in Mexico wasn't as evolved as it was now. So it had, this organization had, a very robust group of volunteers, but more from a professional perspective, I thought there could be potential elsewhere. Again, I wasn't looking for the move, but since it came, drastic difference. Just imagine from a small NGO to, a company this size. But I think it was still smooth because my entry point was the foundation. It's still small, so it was a small team. You could really make an impact, very close relationship with all those NGOs. And then slowly going into more of the, the functional and the corporate work.
I think it's so imperative for Latinos and Latinas particularly to get involved with non-for-profits. We, as a community, we receive only 2% of all the philanthropic money that is out there. So Latino organizations are not there. If you struggle so much to get into a good college and so on, the first choice you want to have is, I want to make money for my family. So you don't go into the non-for-profit sector and you don't get involved. So I would love to see, how do we make it more appealing for Latinos to be in non-for-profit boards, to make sure that you're pulling your companies towards being involved with non-for-profits that are helping your community, because I think that there's a lot of what you just said about the sizes and that gives you leadership opportunities, that gives you a network, let alone, helping the community. It's all about what you're learning these experiences. And for me, transitioning from a big organization, big sort of international organization like the UN to small non-for-profits, it's helped me to learn so much more about, a new sector as well.
No, you're right. I think there's benefit, of course, but more than, the benefits you mentioned, networking, leadership skills, I think we should also feel, responsible and accountable for, we are privileged, let's make an impact, let's give back, let's make sure that, we use and leverage our skills to bring others along the way. So I think it's
less ingrained in the Latino community, especially those of us who grew up outside of the US, this idea of volunteering and giving back to even your own institutions, I don't think it's as ingrained as in the US. When I came for my MBA, I realized that you could volunteer to be class president or class whatever. And then while you were there, you could be part of a society, or I became part of the Latin American society. Mm-hmm. In Mexico, I didn't have that option. And that's almost like how you start getting these leadership opportunities that then when you go to work, you can...
Become organic.
Exactly, yeah, right. And I wish that was more ingrained in our community.
But we're coming to maturity, and I think that it's going to be interesting right now to learn from other communities. We're doing a lot of efforts to bring Latinos and Jewish leaders to learn from each other, but it's at the end of the day, you're in surviving and then try to grow, and then when you thrive is when you start giving back. And Latinos are thriving right now, so I think that we're going to start seeing more of that giving back mentality. All right.
I want to just touch on another topic that you just mentioned, because I get this question a lot from mentees, and I think it's important to explain the path. My perspective, and what you said confirms it, but tell me if you've seen a different trend, is that you can either change function or company. So when people say, I'm not happy in what I do, they're like, I'm just going to go and try to find a job in a different company in a function I've never done. I think that's a really tall order. But what you did is you stayed on the non-profit side or on the helping other side, but you went to the private sector. And then within the private sector, later you changed your function. So what I try to tell my mentees is, if you don't like what you do, either try to get another job in your same company, because you've already built a reputation, you understand how the company works, or take another job doing the same thing you do in a different company. And it sounds basic, but it's not that intuitive.
You're right. I mean, I wouldn't suggest to just say, okay, now I want to start from scratch, like different sector, different company. I think what you're mentioning is, try to get a little bit of a smooth transition, at least partially. So it's either the same company doing something different, or it's doing the same but within a different company. I think in my case, it's a little bit unique, but it was a great path because same passion brought into the private sector. And, once I understood that sector a little bit better, I was able to broaden my scope because I was still accountable for the foundation, but then expanded my remit on, corporate affairs.
Let's take a moment to recognize that you, a Latina, are leading global diversity, equity, and inclusion for one of the largest companies in the world. How did you do that? From the non-for-profit where you were in Mexico to where you are today, what decisions did you take? Who helped you? What were the paths? How did this happen to be?
Hi, thank you.
And congrats, by the way.
Yes.
We are so proud of you.
I mean, it's impressive. I think you're very humble, which is very Latina, but you're a rock star, and we want to know what's the making of that rock star. How did you get there?
Thank you. I mean, first, I think a lot of support and the network, because otherwise, I don't know if it happened to you, but whilst growing up and growing in my career, I always had this piece of, I always tell my dad, this was fully about meritocracy and study and, your MBA. And I'm like, you forgot to tell me that I had to get married, At some point it was like, okay, I'm stressing. I remember when I came back from my MBA and I gave him the title, he was like, okay, now you're PhD. I was like, papi, no, por favor, viva la paz, I'm done, right? So it was almost like more and more. But that network, that support from the family meant a lot. Marry the right guy. Like, seriously, it sounds, but it's very important, especially, if in parallel you want to have a family, unless you have a partner that believes in what you're doing and wants to share accountabilities and responsibilities at home, I think it's going to be very challenging. And then I guess a couple of things that helped. So first, the company. I mean, I have to really be always very grateful for PepsiCo because I've heard, and again, this is Mexico I'm talking about, many colleagues, many female leaders who struggled, who really had significant events in their work life on, discrimination, I did not. I worked for a company where you could really thrive as a woman. So that I think was part of the formula. Very good mentors, of course.
How did you find the mentors?
I mean, PepsiCo has some formal ways of mentorship, but then eventually I understood that even if there wasn't a formal moment there, I really needed some guidance according to where I was, to the challenges and the opportunities, the momentum of my career. So I proactively looked for people to say, okay, I'm here, I see that you could help me because of this or that, and I need guidance, and no one ever said no. And I've had very good mentors. I also had a very good coach during difficult times, Marty Selman, who is actually one of the co-authors of our women empowerment books. And I have to say that I have a before and after Marty. Wow. In my darkest moments, he was really critical to help me understand what was going on and, flip the coin and move forward. And, finally, I would say that a mantra that I've always had, and it has been very intentional because personally, I'm very risk averse. So it's not like, let's go for it. But, I have a mantra that I always share that it's, you will always regret more what you didn't do than what you did. So every time I was like in some kind of critical decision of, do I want to move forward? This is a regional role. This implies travel. You have a 1-year-old, you're changing diapers. Do you go for it or not? It was always, of course, together making the decision with my husband, like, let's go for it. You will always regret more the what if, how would that have looked like, than go for it, learn. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that helped me, kind of cut and go for it, and especially make those critical moves in my career, but especially the one that was moving to the US. Because, without moving to the US, probably I wouldn't have this role.
Which is something I would like to learn more. But just to say, it is really important what you said is take risk, the power of yes. Be proactive in looking for mentors.
Totally.
And ask for what you want, not only technically, but also navigation and help. And
so we haven't talked about coaches. So I don't want to derail the entire conversation, but I want to talk a little bit about how do you get a coach? Did you pay for it? Did your company pay for it? What is the difference between having a coach and having a mentor?
I would say a mentor is someone who would probably more at a high level help you with knowledge, help you with guidance, do a little bit of a camera check, because, probably a mentor will be close to seeing you interact in your business environment. A coach, it offers something way more structured and with a lot of technical formulas on how to support development of skills, mapping derailers, tackle derailers. So I've had a couple, but Marty in particular came to my life thanks to PepsiCo, because I did have some things that were off. So they offered me this coaching opportunity, and it was difficult. I remember the first session was, a 2-day immersion. And
wow.
Yeah. Very, very intense. I cried during the night because it gets back. A good coaching gets back to what is it? Why are you acting like that? Why does this feel so personal? So it gets personal.
It's more like therapy.
It is like a fast-track therapy, but literally before and after. So, I think that sometimes you can get the support and sometimes it gets funded, but I would say that it's one of the best investments that you can make.
And so I think that the message for our audience is ask your company for a coach, and if they don't have it, consider the investment, but find a good coach. Not every do due diligence about who can coach you and who doesn't, depending on what you need, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think people don't talk enough about how probably most successful executives have a coach.
I want to talk about two things. The first one is your move and what is it? But maybe we talk about that on identity later with Latinos about what is the difference between working in Latin America and working in the US. But you also said that your coach was one of your co-authors and the co-authors of 2 incredible books that I would like to make sure that everyone in our audience reads, particularly because it tackles something that is so important for Latinas, so important for our community, and that is such a taboo, which is power. Talk to us about these books, writing the books. How did writing a book elevated you and allowed you to have a better platform? And also, what is the subject of the book? Why is power so important for Latinas? And what's stopping us from taking it?
We wrote the books. The co-authors are Marty Selman, our coach, because it was also Paula Santilli's coach, who's the other co-author, PepsiCo Latin America CEO. And, we just, as Marty was coaching us, of course, individually and at different times, we kind of saw this opportunity of there are some nuances of, Latin American women and coaching simply because of some of the cultural values that are embedded. And one of the most important ones was exactly the one you mentioned, Claudia, that is the relationship with power. I personally, ended up with Marty because I started giving away my power. And what I want to mention that because sometimes we might think that, you've worked in the corporate world forever. You probably feel very comfortable with power. You might feel comfortable for a while, and then something happens. You have a very different boss. It's a different personal circumstance, and then suddenly you can start feeling very uncomfortable with power. So it's not necessarily linear, and you will always feel comfortable or not. But, once we decided to write the books, the main component, the main topic was power, because we understood that many Latin American women sometimes have even a negative conception of power.
Totally.
Power as coercive, power as authority, and not power as what it is. That it's the strongest piece of influence that you can offer, right? So that's how the book came to life. It addresses the relevance of power, and then networking, self-promotion, and a fourth one that it's also very important, that it's self-care.
So networking, self-promotion, and self-care.
And power.
Power.
I mean, we separate the topics,
Okay.
but yeah, everything at the end is related to power. I mean, I think the core component is, how do you get comfortable using your power? How do you spend time and understand how relevant it is to understand the power dynamic of an organization? If you don't know what's happening, and by power and power dynamics, it's not what's written on the walls. It's that, informal dynamic, what is relevant for what leader. And understanding that power dynamic, it's the only way that you will know how to play with your power. The second component is, do I feel comfortable using my power, or do I have such a high need of approval that I'm giving it away? I mean, that's what happened to me. And again, I always felt comfortable until I got a different job. It was this regional role, very demanding boss. I then, when I think back, think it was also, really with all this family pressure that I was putting on myself. Like, I have 2 little kids. I have to make sure that, I manage at home whilst also managing this new challenge. And all of it somehow pushed myself into completely new heights of levels of approval. I need to be approved. And the more I needed approval, the more people know that if they say yes, you'll be happy. If they say no, you'll be upset. And that means exactly giving your power away. It's a huge derailer. So, that's kind of what we tackle. Final part of my answer on what did you learn? It was a gift writing the books. First, because we interviewed women all across Latin America for the first book, then globally, partners, colleagues at PepsiCo. And we understood that, there's this very powerful formula of, someone who really wants to take leadership forward. And then, yes, the support you need with some kind of ecosystem, meaning a mentor, a sponsorship, training, whatever that looks like, a network to support you to then, go out there and thrive. And learning from those women was amazing. And then making sure that we use the book to network with other women and support them. We launched the book a week before the pandemic hit.
Wow.
So we had this plan of, the roadshow in Latin America with the book, of course, called off. But then we translated that into a lot of virtual meetings with women. And it was, women went through a lot through the pandemic. So, understanding that you could help or offer some guidance and that it could make an impact was, very inspiring.
There's nothing that I think I would like more for Latinas to embrace and be taught than power and influence. We literally don't have it in our dictionaries. At home, we don't teach our kids to be powerful. We teach our kids to be, or either not even calladita te ves más bonita. I think that we're getting over that. But it is a little bit of, like family and social first, collective. And then there's something that if you don't pay attention to the individual, then it gets diluted. I went to Jesse Jackson's church one Saturday some years ago when I moved to America. And the first thing that he said is like, look at the children. We're taught to shout, like, I'm powerful, I am strong, I'm powerful, I'm strong. And I was like 4-year-olds just shouting and shouting and shouting. And I was like, how cute, why do they do that? But then I was like, holy cow, we don't have that. I have ever been told, please shout out, you're strong or you're powerful. And like that little detail led me to believe that in some instances, we do so much of the self-censorship and so much of the imposter syndrome because we just don't want to be powerful because we're scared as well.
Totally.
To lose our families, to be evil and ugly, and because we're going to have powerful role models that are nice and like us.
Yeah, I mean, again, the concept is power needs a serious marketing effort, because with women, it's still in some cases, it's seen as, she's powerful, then she's going to be, again, authoritarian, she's going to be nasty. So that concept of power as a vehicle of positive impact, of empowering others, needs to be way more embedded since you're a kid.
I would like to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. And I think that we need to learn not only how to be powerful, but how to detect when we're losing our power and how to stop it. I mean, like, there's nothing that, I'm not shy about being like strong and powerful. I don't mind. Like, I grew up to believe that everything is possible and I'm out there and so on. But I had an experience even when I moved to the States with someone who was my partner and was always undermining me, but little by little telling me like, oh, you don't know what you're doing. Oh, you're like a non-for-profit. You don't understand business and so on, until you believe it.
Yeah.
And then I stopped actually being able to take decisions and think rightly. And, I was somehow codependent of someone who probably was just like a white man trying to take away my own organizational power in order to be able to control me more. So I think that those are the kind of things where books like yours and having experiences where we're starting to talk about power and embrace power are so powerful, not only to embrace it, but also to detect when you're, when you have forces outside.
Totally. I mean, you need to learn how to detect if someone is trying to take away your power, or if someone is literally trying to minimize you. And the earlier you do it, the faster you'll be able to do something about it. But it's very real. I mean, what you said, I think it's very real, especially when you're surrounded by people who are narcissists. Narcissists organically will want to take the power away, will be very savvy, politically. And if you're just lost there, you're going to give it away, and it's going to be a huge loss.
So the last question about power, I promise you. So you wrote this book with Paula, two incredibly powerful women in PepsiCo. So what would you like to see Latinas do and as a result of your books and what you're doing? How would you like to see Latinas being powerful in PepsiCo?
I mean, and everywhere. I think we would love to see women grow and make sure that while they grow and they are more empowered, they empower others. I mean, we have these T-shirts and we got them. I mean, we were like all very romantic and excited about the book that, that say empowered women should empower women. And we always, when we give workshops, etc., that's a call to action. I mean, it's not only for you. The only way to really make this into a structural and systemic change, if it at some point, once you have that power and you're feeling comfortable using it, you open it systemically and empower others. And empowering means maybe in your space, in your function, in whatever you do for your community, It's not something high level, it's really actionable. In your space, what can you do? How can you train? How can you push for better mentorship programs? How can you actively formalize a network, I mean, let's all make sure that we play our part.
We haven't talked about power in, I don't know how many episodes we've recorded, 25, 26. This is the first time the topic comes up. So thank you for writing the book and thank you for talking about it now. The other topic that we were going to talk about, which we have touched on, but I know it's a passion of yours, it's self-promotion. So can you tell our audience, I mean, we all know how important it is, but can you give them the playbook on how to do self-promotion?
First, I mean, I would mention that, and Claudia said it, calladita te ves más bonita. There's also that, cultural heritage that we have. In some cases, again, I won't generalize, but in many cases in Latin America, the value of a woman is, be humble. Never speak about yourself, because then it looks like, oh my God, you're just there chatty about, no, don't. Just wait to be called. So don't speak until they ask you to. So that will never play.
In corporate America.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the playbook, I guess, is first understand that unless you are vocal about what you want and about your skills, not necessarily anyone else will do it. I mean, usually the rule is whenever a group is speaking about your careers, you will not be in the room. So make sure that, whoever needs to know where you want to go and why you're suited and you're ready for that role, that everyone knows it. Second is, understand that if you don't do it, someone else will. Many people are really good at self-promotion. So unless you work on that skill, you're completely putting yourself in disadvantage. And writing it really helps, because I think there's a big difference between self-promotion and adulation. This is not about, I'm so smart. No. It's
I'm
really
strong. I'm powerful.
Exactly. It's really about, okay, these are the skills that I manage. This is the experience I have. These skills in my previous role yielded these results. So once you write it, it's way easier to talk about because they're facts. You're not talking subjectively about, I'm strategic. No. I manage these skills. Once I implemented, these were the results. And that's way easier to do. So write it, make sure that whatever you write makes you feel comfortable. And then finally, connected to it is make sure that you make the network, create the network, so that people who need to know where you want to go are there whenever a decision will be made. And I would just say, because you asked that first initially, probably I wasn't good at actually, I didn't even think about self-promotion earlier in my career. I was just waiting for anything to happen.
Or working.
And working and waiting. So after the books, I was like, no, you really need to be more intentional. And that's where I started, raising my hand. And probably my move to the US was about that, speaking to the right people. First, of course, at that point, Paula, who was my manager. But then understanding, okay, if you want to move to the US, who are key stakeholders that could help you drive that change? And speak to each one of them. Make sure you have your elevator speech, but that whatever you say, it's grounded on results, because then it really feels organic.
Yeah.
So
it's organic, but it was very strategic. It sounds like you had a map of who you needed to talk to, and
also the network. I really like thinking of, if you put it this way, you wrote a book with your manager, so it's possible to partner with your manager, not only to follow your manager, partner with your manager, and I'm sure she supported you into getting into a different role, so that there's now 2 Mexican, incredible Latinas leading incredible areas of PepsiCo, and that's how you apply also the network, not only the self-promotion, but the network of supporting each other.
Yeah, the network, it's critical. Paula always says it, that sometimes some women, have their career goals as their best kept secret. And once a role comes up and someone else is appointed and they say, I wanted that role, the real and genuine answer from the manager, it's like, we never knew. We never imagined that you actually wanted to move, that you would like to explore this and that. So, it's not only one person. Let's make sure that you create your strategic network and that you share your career aspirations and why you're ready for whatever. And then, the final one is, you will never be ready, So sometimes also we not general, but some women are, no, I couldn't ever apply because I don't have this part of the experience. You will get it. Mm-hmm. Progress over perfection. No one else is, because they will be there otherwise. So it's more about, okay, these are the areas that I still don't manage, but I have these skills that will help me learn, that will help me get there, and plus I have these others that will balance that, etc. So try to find a good, elevator pitch, because it makes a difference.
I would love to talk to you about identity and how, from your perspective, how was it different to work in Latin America and in the US once you become a Latina or a Hispanic and belong to this group, and then see how was it in your experience, in personal experience, but also in your corporate role? How do you see Latinidad being a super, a pro, a con? What are the areas, biases, and stereotypes? When did you have to dial down? When was it useful?
Yeah, good question. So I thought it was going to be quote unquote easier because, I transferred from PepsiCo Latin America to PepsiCo US. So it's not like it was a different company, super, super familiar to the US, if you're Mexican. So even as a family, we're like, no, it's going to be, and it's not easy, it's not easy. It's a big move. At least it was for us. And I think you're right, Claudia. Probably the bigger difference is the culture, from being one Mexican in a Mexican space, speaking your language with the same
shared experience
and values,
yeah.
and do's and don'ts and behaviors, to really coming in and learning and being eyes wide open of the different culture and what you say impacts and it's interpreted versus what probably you mean, right? What has played, I guess, in favor, I think people now are looking for more vulnerable leaders. And sometimes I think Latinos are more willing to be outspoken and show vulnerability. So that probably has helped. Then the con, and maybe it's maybe more of my own thing, it's the same one. I'm, not vulnerable, I'm very emotional. Seriously emotional, all the bad things, the crying, so that doesn't help. That doesn't help anywhere, but especially I think in this culture, it's like, whoa, what is that? What's happening, right? So just trying to manage emotions is something that I've had to learn.
And how are you adjusting to the culture here? Do you have a coach? Do you have a mentor? Because there's very pragmatic things that are done differently, right? Like from the way that presentations, like the layout of your decks, to what's explicit in your communication versus what's implicit, how you build relationships. In Latin America is very casual, like we invite each other to our homes and we introduce each other to our family, and that's how we build trust. Here it's like you build trust by delivering results and showing up on time and outcomes. So do you have somebody teaching you? What do you do?
I've had support, but I really reached out to a couple of leaders to become my mentors. So that helped a lot to help me, navigate and adapt. But, what I think in this space it's more important is make sure that you have a network of people who are working closely to you that can give you the camera check. Because a lot of, this cultural disconnects happen whilst you're engaging, whilst you're saying something and, maybe the receiver is not understanding what you meant. So someone who's out there saying, this came across as not exactly what you meant, helps you on a day-to-day correct course. So those are things that have helped, but I'm of course still learning.
But I think that's excellent. Like if you join a company and there's a couple of people that you can trust, maybe tell them, hey, we're going into this meeting. Like if you ever see me saying something that sounds odd or that I overreacted, whatever, give me feedback immediately, right? So they can help you.
The immediate feedback is the best way forward, because the formality of every 6 months, it's done. If it's like real time, this just happened, it's easier to learn, but it's also easier to correct.
Yeah.
I do want to ask, you have an incredible role overseeing, like so many of culture, and you happen to be a Latina, and we're so proud of you. And so we like flipping the script as a technique where we know there are many values, cultural nuances that Latinos, particularly Latinas, we bring to the table that somehow, because of unconscious biases, have been misunderstood as negative assets or as lower assets as opposed to positive assets. One of them is accentism, where people think that you're less intelligent because you have an accent, where we have to flip the script to make people understand it's actually the contrary. You're bicultural, bilingual, exactly. Therefore you have better negotiation skills than others. Is there anything that you think are cultural Latino values that you have seen either in your company and others where you wish there would be a corporate flip, like a flip the script, so that those Latino values could be seen as actually very positive? You said vulnerability. Yeah. Normally seen as negative, but actually when you're vulnerable, you open it. Like maybe in the emotional.
That's probably the one that I would say it's it has a flip side, right? Because, I mean, it's not only vulnerability, it's the style. The leadership style sometimes can help influence more, sometimes can help bring others with you. So I think there's this flip side of, there's hierarchy, but then there's, more of a like joint leadership style, and that sometimes it's very welcomed. From a leadership component, that's the one I would mention. The other one, it's more like the case for, it's something that we really highlight in the books, because the hypothesis of the books, especially of the first one in Latin America, is women can really make a difference in the development of Latin America. And it's not only of course, more people entering the workforce means an increase in GDP. It's women in Latin America who were always, are very disciplined. They work, they're hard workers. That comes from a value that could be misunderstood. Like, are you submissive? No, women are hardworking, women are disciplined, women are caregivers. All of that, when you translate into the workplace, places, and we have the data, where women work, it's just, productivity levels go up, absenteeism goes down, organizational health surveys go up. But then if you think about more of the macro case, it's not only the GDP, it's how that money is spent. Because in Latin America, again, money in the hands of women goes back, over 90% of the money goes back to the household as food, medicine, clothing, education. So I think there's also an important case for understanding how that Latinidad in women plays as a big asset for the workforce.
I love, however, that phrase that you said, and I hope that you allow me to coin it in the work that we do, but empowered Latinas need to empower Latinas.
Totally.
So you are getting and you're giving back immediately. That's a cultural shift that we need to do so that we can elevate each other and be with each other.
And one of our last questions that we always ask is, what would you tell Monica Bauer when she was 30 years old? What advice would you give her if you could go back in time?
Enjoy more, Personally, as I mentioned, I'm very risk averse. I'm a little bit of a control freak. I'm always thinking about the what if, and no, enjoy the ride. It's going to be fine, Yes. That is an exercise I try to do, and my coach asked, help me, just let the anguish go away. Just do this exercise, what he called the what if exercise. No, but if, what if that happens? Well, and then you go down the chain of consequences and you realize that it's actually not that big of a deal. Yeah. So I would say enjoy the ride even more and take risks, because that's what life's for. And taking risk is what will make a bigger impact.
Did you tell her to say this? Okay. Who else should we elevate in this podcast and should we bring?
You should bring Paula Santilli, for sure. Paula, it's a dear friend of mine. As I was mentioning, she's PepsiCo Latin America CEO. But I think that
another,
than being a great leader and an amazing human being, I think what Paula has brought to Latin America, it's a continuous commitment of, growing the business in a way that permanently spurs social and economic growth. So if you think about a region that has such a large bottom of the pyramid, I think that's exactly the testament of empowered women empowering others, because it's not only women in this case, it's community. So you'll enjoy having a chat with her.
Okay, we'll invite
Love
her.
that. Monica, what an honor to have you here.
Well, you really brought to the table topics that we hadn't heard about. So, I can't wait to review this and to make the snippets for social media and relive this conversation. It was excellent.
No, thank you. And just first, congratulations to you, because this is, I think, a channel much needed and hopefully inspiring many others. So thank you and congratulations.
And with leaders like Monica, we're going to be able to lead and succeed.
¡A la Latina!